We've got Ben Dziwulski from WODprep on the podcast, and Ben and I recorded this episode sitting on a bed in a hotel together. It was very reminiscent of, sorority pillow fights and other such activities. But yeah, we were hanging out in Toronto for an event there, and Ben and I had communicated online a few times, but we got to hang out in person a little bit, and of course, busted out the microphones, recorded a podcast. Ben has been super, super helpful for me in terms of giving me some insight into how he runs his business, WODprep, which he does entirely online after selling a CrossFit gym. And the world of online content creation is brutal and difficult to actually get some traction in. So Ben has given me some pretty solid insight in terms of how he thinks about creating content for his business, and honestly just actually solving a problem for people, right? A lot of people want to be influencers, a lot of people want to have an online business, but the actual thing that you need to do is solve a problem for people. And Ben figured out how to do that in terms of getting people really solid information on improving their toes to bar, improving their muscle ups, improving their handstand walking, all the things that CrossFitters want to be able to do. Ben was like, hey, guess what? I know how to do this stuff. I can show it to you. And he does. So we dig in deep there in terms of how he thinks about coaching, how he thinks about his business. And, the pillow fights were unfortunately off microphone. So none of that for you today. All right, enjoy. I think that one of the things that's challenging in any sort of like coaching type of situation is, as someone who's a coach, you probably have a certain level of expertise where you know like details and backroom talk and, have read articles and all that kind of stuff. And then you're trying to communicate that to someone who doesn't necessarily have that background and also doesn't necessarily see their problem in the same way that you as a coach see their problem. I think that's a big hurdle for people to overcome. I know I struggle with that all the time. And maybe based upon some conversations that we have, it seems like WODprep is essentially built upon the idea of explaining to people how to do something in language that makes sense to them.
Yep.
And sort of going around that like expertise trap. So how do you think about that process?
So one of my mentors talks about the curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge is when someone knows something so deeply and understands something so well that they just want to impart all of the knowledge that they possibly can into that individual. And that is like the worst possible thing you can do when you're trying to explain something like a snatch. You know, like, I don't know if you've seen the chalkboard diagram where it's like, you start here, magic occurs, and then you end up here. Yeah. Have you seen that drawing? The whole thing, that the advantage I think I have is maybe I'm just not smart. And so I can't explain things very, very smartly. So I explain them very simply. But I'm trying to remember exactly which book it was, but another kind of thing I hang my hat on is it's actually Richard Fineman. He's known for being able to explain things very clearly. Like, he explains all of math in like a 3-page document.
Yeah.
And that shows mastery in the understanding of that movement. Now, I'm not claiming at all that I'm a gymnastics master. Most of my courses are gymnastics based. The only thing I do have is like a couple of the gyms I've coached at. The gym that I specifically started in Maryland with one of my buddies, we had most of our athletes were brand new to CrossFit. They had never done it. They bought our Living Social campaign, and we had to figure out how to teach these people these complex movements.
Why Living Social, not Groupon?
Because Groupon was like played out at the time.
Oh, okay, cool.
And Living Social,
I think
Living Social, the person who called me was just cooler, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. So yeah, we had to learn by experience, and I think that experience of actually teaching people and just trying to explain things really simply. My dad was always really good at explaining like how the world worked when I was younger. Like, if I asked him like, hey Dad, how does this work? He'd be like, well, Ben, and he'd explain it, but he'd also do a really good job of making it simple. Yeah. And I don't know if he imparted that on me, but yeah, it's simple coaching, in my opinion, is better coaching for an overwhelming majority of the athletes that walk into a CrossFit gym.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned Fineman, who's an intellectual hero to many, right? Mm-hmm. But I mean, you're being a little bit self-deprecating earlier about, oh yeah, maybe I'm just not that smart, so that's why, whatever. But I mean, honestly, Fineman is
generally regarded as like one of the most intelligent people of all time. And, his ability to explain things clearly, I think, shows not necessarily, in his case, obviously, like, a lack of intelligence, but much more an ability to prioritize.
Yeah.
Right? It's like what actually matters is the important thing.
Prioritization is something that, so many coaches, even like coaches I respect, they lose sight of the priority of the movement. Like, let's say muscle ups, for example. That's the first course we ever released, was Muscle Up Madness. And I realized, like, there are like 3 things I need to teach someone to do to a muscle up. Okay. It doesn't have to be holding a perfect hollow body position. It doesn't have to be, being able to maintain the most beautiful arch position. It's just, hey, how many pull-ups can you do? You can do 10 pull-ups? Yeah, I can teach you a muscle up. Right. Done. Yeah. It's that simple, honestly, for a lot of people, assuming they have, shoulders that aren't going to fall out of their sockets, as long as they have the prerequisite strength and then they don't have any pre-existing injuries. It's just a simple, step-by-step process of like, hey, let's work on the false grip. And then letting them know, like, guess what? You're doing the false grip right the first time when it really sucks.
Yeah.
They should not feel good. Okay, it doesn't feel good. Good. That's a good false grip. Okay, next we're going to pull the rings to our sternum, not our shoulders. Okay, good. And now all I want you to do is look at the floor, right? Because guess what? When you look at the floor, guess what you do naturally? You're pulling yourself or pushing yourself through the rings and into that dip position. And it's like, I can teach someone a muscle up in those 3 simple steps, when a lot of people, when I've seen them teach the muscle up, are just like, all right, we're going to start by laying on the ground and, we'll work on our hollow body position for the next 30 minutes. And all of those things are great if you're trying to build like a very long-term, high-level gymnastics background. But for a lot of people that go to CrossFit, they're just giving them that aha moment where they're like, oh my gosh, I just did my first muscle up. Seeing the smile on their face gives them that urge to keep showing up. And then naturally, with their attendance, with their consistency, that's how they're going to pick up on a lot of these other intricacies of, being able to string together maybe 15 muscle ups one day. Totally different athlete than the person who's trying to learn the first one. And I think they should be treated differently.
Yeah, and I think there's an inherent conflict in a lot of coaches as well of like, okay, do we want to fast track people? Yes or no, right? And that some coaches will get very upset about any sort of fast tracking of like, oh, well, that doesn't respect the development of the athlete. It doesn't respect the tradition of my sport, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's the other side of like, well, maybe you should figure out how to do the thing and then fix it over time, right? And that there's inherent trade-offs there, but what I hear you saying is that it's more effective to get someone bought in and excited and then teach them all the finer details rather than saying, well, you're never going to do this until you master this exact body position that you don't even see how it relates to what you're trying to do.
Double unders is a prime example. And I think it's analogous to a lot of these other movements that, sure, muscle ups and snatches and things like that they're a little scary. So you want people to be perfect when they do them. But realistically speaking, the first time they do that thing, it's not going to be perfect. Double unders, though, when you teach someone double unders, guess what? They're not going to look perfect their first few reps. Okay, it's impossible. They're not going to string together an effortless, perfectly non-piked, non-donkey kicked double under with perfect rope, posture and like all that's. It's not happening. You're going to look like an idiot is what you're going to look like. So for me, I help people embrace the fact that they're going to look and probably feel like an uncoordinated, monkey hopping around. And then all I do is we take that base layer of like, okay, you got your first double under. Fantastic. Now let's get you to keep the rope spinning. Okay, now you can keep the rope spinning. Let's try 2 double unders unbroken. And I don't care what they look like. Not at all. No judgments. You can look like an idiot. Just give me 2 unbroken now. And then slowly but surely build on that foundation. And then eventually at the end, like, I want you to look perfect when you're doing your 100 plus unbroken. But I feel like to get there, they don't have to start with perfect. Their first double under does not have to be perfect.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't see what the progression actually looks like, right? That there is with movements in CrossFit, in a lot of scenarios, there are some sort of like 0 to 1 moments where it's like, you couldn't do a muscle up, now you can. Mm-hmm. You couldn't do a double under, Now you can. You couldn't do a handstand push-up. Now you can. In business, you had 0 sales. Now you have 1 sale. Like,
right.
There are these moments where it's like, oh, that's a different thing now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of people don't see the actual iterative process that a lot of things go through to get better, right? Where it's like, it's okay, like you said, to do a pretty bad job of this, but to go from 0 to 1 and then fix it is a much more effective process than trying to make everything perfect before you even do it.
Yep. It's so important to just have the concept of, like, as a coach specifically, talking to coaches, that 0 to 1, that, aha moment, or having it all click into place, no matter what you call it, it doesn't matter. Being able to give your athletes that experience, because a lot of times as coaches, we don't necessarily remember those, or we might forget them as we get more experience, and as PRs start coming less and less frequently, we forget that, like, these people are on this journey, and they're kind of tiptoeing their way along this CrossFit journey. And if we can help them get to these little milestones where they're like, oh my gosh, like, I'm a muscle upper now, like whether or not, they don't care if they're good at it, they can do it. Like, they were able to check off that box. That is such a huge experience that if you can facilitate that as a coach, you're going to have stickier memberships. You're going to have people who are bought in, because, like, when you're good at something, you're going to tend to do it more often. If you always have to go into the gym and scale your workout every single day, week in and week out, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's discouraging to a lot of people. And as coaches, we need to recognize that and either do what we can to fix the fact that there's no, ascension, or make sure that we help them make that ascension, get them to the RX ability on these specific movements.
Yeah, in most scenarios too, it's better to have something that you can kind of do that kind of works that you can then iterate on, right? I mean, if we mentioned business, where it's better to get a website up and see if anyone clicks on your thing and adjust your copy than it is to spend, a year trying to build the perfect thing or the perfect product or the perfect company or whatever, and then you put it out and you get crickets.
Yep.
Which I've made that mistake.
We've all made the mistake. Anyone who's done anything on the internet has made that mistake.
I made that mistake a few times. Do you have an example?
Oh, let's see. We actually tried launching a. I thought it was going to be a big hit. Like, I kind of put the cart before the horse, and was very like. I was like running calculations, like, what happens when we have 1,000 people sign up? So what it was,
how are we going to support all these?
How are we going to support all these people that are going to sign up? What happened was we created an offer that was called the Open Action Plan, and basically it was people submitted their videos, and we gave them some video reviews. Another time we've run this is called Athlete Analysis. Still good ideas, and I think they could catch on. But basically, we were offering video reviews for people. So, like, hey, you send in a video, one of our coaching staff will give you a full breakdown and give you some pointers and tips to, like, help you, take the next step forward. And an iterative process. They just keep sending their videos back. We help them improve. And we launched it, like, right before the open, and, like, announced it to, my email list and everything. And it was just like, like a handful of people bought, and I was, like, expecting like 100. I was like, all right, team, like, prepare when we have 300 videos come through. Yeah. And it was like the day after we launched it, and we had a few people buy, and I was like, hey, like, one of my coaches, Coach Colette, she was the one that was, like, spearheading it because she's amazing. And I was like, hey, like, how's the volume going? She's like, well, I've checked my email 6 times and I haven't had a single email come through yet. And I'm like, oh, okay. People aren't using it even yet. And then she ended up, giving people what they wanted, and they did send in videos. But yeah, the only way you know whether something works is if you try it. When you're talking about movements in CrossFit, like, the only way someone's going to get better at muscle ups is you're going to have to get them on the rings or get them on the bar and let them try. We actually released a video not too long ago about, like, a new technique for banded bar muscle ups. It's a cool way to, like, cross 2 bands so that they're not, like, smacking you in the face and all of your other frontal regions while you're doing, the kip. And we had so much people, like, give us feedback. They're like, yeah, like, my coach won't let me practice with bands. And I'm like, I understand why, maybe because you don't want the athlete to be reliant on the bands. But I mean, come on. Yeah. If someone's trying to practice something, like, let them use freaking bands. Like, let them experience what it's like to get over the bar. Let them grease the groove, so to speak, and understand, like, wow, this is what it's like on top of this thing. And then eventually, as a coach, your goal is to help them ascend through that. Don't just blatantly ban all bands in your gym because you don't like them.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those things where, back in the day, I don't know if you ever experienced this, but there would be coaching at an affiliate, and the workout of the day would be EVA, right? 5 rounds, 800-meter run, 30 pull-ups, 30 heavy kettlebell swings, and I'm not sure if that's the exact right prescription, but then you'd have people doing banded pull-ups, and they just spend an hour and do like literally 150 banded pull-ups, just looking absolutely crazy, and you're like, this is not right.
Yeah, that's probably not the right way to use it.
This is not what we want. This is not what we want to be happening right now.
And then and out of that is, I think, like the old school way of using bands, where it's like, oh, you can't do pull-ups? Yeah, just do banded kipping pull-ups. And it's just like people would do hundreds of banded kipping pull-ups or banded pull-ups in general. And like that's where people had the reaction of like, we don't do bands. Bands are bad. But no, bands can be a great tool. I mean, I literally have a video on YouTube that's like, stop using bands for developing strict pull-ups. You can definitely use bands for developing strict pull-ups as long as you use the tool correctly. So, yeah.
Well, I think any type of nuance is always going to be challenging to understand. That someone is going to swing the pendulum too far in one direction or the other.
Right.
Why don't you think people want video review? Because that's something that I've experienced as well, that it seems like a good idea. People say that they want it, but they don't actually, number one, they don't want to pay for it. And number two, when they do pay for it, even getting them to actually participate is challenging.
They do want video review because a lot of our courses offer, like, people don't even realize this, like all of our courses have a private group to go with them that has videos. Like you submit videos and our coaching staff will review your videos and give you feedback. So it's like we do that. But the offer that specifically is, hey, this is all about video reviews. That's what athlete analysis was. That's what the open action plan was. And what we found is like, there's just too much friction. Like people will buy it and they're like, oh, now I have to take my video or take my camera or take my phone and I have to film it and I have to trim it and then I have to figure out how to upload it and then I have to figure out what email address to send it to. And it's just like, it's friction. If you had it all built into like a really seamless app, which, I know there's a million apps out there now. But if you had it built into your own seamless app, it could certainly work and you'd probably have better adherence. But still, it's just like you're telling people to go to the gym and they have to remember to film that one thing. And it's just friction that they're at their computer buying it, but they're not at their computer submitting it. And it's like, I don't know. It's difficult for people to actually follow through with. So.
Yeah, it's just kind of funky. I always wonder if there's more embarrassment there when someone is actually doing it than we necessarily realize, where it seems like something that sounds good. And then when they're actually like, okay, cool, I'm going to film this and I'm going to send it. And they're like, oh, but I look stupid. I don't actually want to send this.
Yeah. I mean, I think some athletes, we do have people who buy our courses that they'll be like, hey, I need help making progress. And I'm like, well, are you submitting your videos in the Facebook group? And it's like, oh no. Which is actually why we have a private email address you can send to. But if you're not willing to let
interesting.
At least a coach see it, come on. You can't, that's an uncoachable athlete and I don't want you joining my programs, sure, you can buy them if you want, but I'd rather have someone who's willing to be coached. And sure, if you're not comfortable sharing your snatch demonstration with the world on our little private Facebook group, then fine. We have a private email address you can send it to. So
does that actually get utilized?
It does. Yeah.
Interesting. Are there more or less people sending to the private email address than to Facebook?
Definitely way less. A lot of people are using the private Facebook groups, but we have either Facebook, people who don't do Facebook, they're the ones using the email address, or people who are just a little shy, and don't want to share their what they think is just, god awful form. And really it's just like, hey, we've seen 1,000 of these. Like you're doing fine. You're in the right place because you're making an attempt to improve, which I always respect. Like, people like apologize ahead of time. Like, hey, I'm going to be a really hard one to fix. And it's like, listen, we've seen it all. And like, this is what we do for a living. So trust us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, I see a lot of people who, like we were talking about earlier, just are very perfectionist with things. And it seems like they don't understand, like, cool. Yeah. You're doing your snatch and it has a bunch of problems. And for it to not have as many problems, you're going to have to do probably literally 750 more reps that are bad.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be like hundreds more reps that are wrong before you do one that is pretty much all right.
Yep.
And that's really hard for people, that they don't see the progression over time. They only see that it's wrong in the moment and get like real hard on themselves.
A great analogy here is baking. Like I love baking chocolate chip cookies. And guess what? The first several batches of my chocolate chip cookies were nearly inedible. That, like they were too runny, so it ended up turning into this like pan cookie cake rather than like individual cookies. Sounds okay. Yeah, no, they tasted good.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. It's really hard to mess up sugar and butter and flour. Like that's a pretty good combination. Yeah, there's some businesses and delicious meals have been built off the back of that. Anyway, so like the only way you're going to get better at baking, like you can follow a recipe to a T, but how many people have followed a recipe to a T and it still doesn't work?
Still terrible.
Right? It still like just does not work for whatever. Yeah. So the only way you improve is by like putting yourself in this, like to bake more cakes or bake more cookies or put yourself in the ring, whatever analogy you want to use. I'm just hungry, so I'm using a baking analogy. But you have to step up to the plate and take more swings. There's another analogy for you. The more attempts you make at trying to improve, the quicker and more consistent your improvement will be. If you stay behind closed doors and you aren't willing to like put yourself out there, or you're someone who's just like, I mean, this is a message to everyone listening who like is like tentative to buy maybe one of my courses or coaching with anyone. Say, I'm going to figure it out myself. I'm going to do it myself. I'll be able to figure it out myself. No, it's not smart to be isolated and have an audience of one, like you trying to improve yourself with no feedback from the outside world. That's not a very smart way to go about it. So actually making that investment and being like, hey, can I get some help here? Being a little bit vulnerable and like going out and taking action. That's how people really start to see those huge transformations.
Yeah, there's a desire, like you said, to sort of figure it out on your own, which I think some people will also wear as like a badge of honor.
Mm-hmm.
I know I did that with guitar growing up, which is in retrospect just like really embarrassing and frustrating. Because I was like, yeah, I'm like a self-taught guitar player or whatever. It's like, dude, actually you hold your pick really weird and your picking is terrible. And like you can kind of play some stuff, but it's like super sloppy. And it probably took you, 6 years longer than it would have if you just like learned the right way the first time. What's wrong with you?
Learning the fundamentals from someone who's good at coaching fundamentals can go a really, really long way for sure.
Yeah. Do you think that's one of the biggest barriers to people actually improving on all these different, let's say, skills that they want to get better at?
A lot of people want to skip. It's actually really funny. We did a launch for our strict pull-up strength program. So we have a program. It's 8 weeks long. It is guaranteed to help you get your first pull-up or improve your pull-ups. Obviously, that guarantee, like it is a guarantee, but that doesn't mean everyone is going to automatically get their first pull-up. You have to put in the work, and you have to also be in a position to, get that first pull-up. If you're someone who's, multiple hundreds of pounds overweight and you don't have crazy strength, then like it's still going to improve your strength, but you might not be able to get a pull-up yet. Anyway, we did a launch for strict pull-up strength, and I thought it was going to be huge. It's like everybody knows they need more strict pull-ups because it's the fundamental movement. Like in order to unlock bar muscle ups and to get better at all the various kipping movements and chest to bar pull-ups and Ring muscle ups, it all comes down to strict pull-ups. This course is going to be a blowout. And it wasn't a dud, but it was like, wow, people don't want strict pull-ups. They want to skip all the way to the sexy stuff, because we did another like mini launch for one of our muscle up courses, and it like almost matched the same number. And it was just like, wow, people really want to skip ahead and they want to get to the sexy stuff. But unfortunately, fitness is something where like taking shortcuts and like jumping over those fundamentals. I know we're kind of almost, some might say, contradicting ourselves, but you still need to have.
We talked about the trade-off.
Yeah,
we talked about the trade-off.
You still need to have the building blocks. Like what did I ask to this hypothetical person earlier in the episode about muscle ups? Right? How many strict pull-ups can you do? If that person didn't answer 10 and they answered 3, I'm going to be like, okay, you need to learn more pull-ups, right? So here's a pull-up course. I'm not going to try to sell, or I'm not going to try to convince someone to skip the progression. But I do think that, there's some people who are very well along that progression, and it's time for them to like take a chance and do more advanced stuff. I can't tell you how many athletes come to us and they're like, yeah, I can do, 12 or 13 strict pull-ups. And how many ring dips can you do? Probably like, 15 or 20. And I'm like, okay, why haven't you tried a muscle up? My gym has, never taught me, or my gym doesn't let me, or they always tell me to scale down, or I've never been asked to try. Because people come to these classes and they get offered the chance to scale down, and they're like, well, I don't want to embarrass myself. I'm definitely going to scale down. When really deep down, it's like they want to take that leap and take that chance. So I think as a coach, we need to be very cognizant of like, what are these athletes' abilities, and what is their goal? Like, what do they actually want to do? Are they someone who just wants to get a sweat in? That's perfectly fine. Or are they someone who's like actively trying to improve themselves and unlock all of these cool skills that are within our sport?
So you're talking about the idea that a lot of people probably need more strict pull-ups, but they don't necessarily want to learn that.
Yeah.
And so one of the big challenges in a lot of businesses is finding that sweet spot where you're able to, get people excited about what they want, but still give them what they need. Mm-hmm. And I think that most people who operate some sort of business are always kind of trying to play back and forth with that dynamic of mm-hmm. like, okay, you think you want this, and maybe you do, but what I as a knowledgeable expert, quote unquote, think you should do is actually this. Mm-hmm. So how do you better understand what people actually want so that you can give them what they need?
For us, it's kind of, I guess, easy because people tell us what they want all the time. People will email us, we'll send out surveys to our audience, we'll post stuff on Instagram, and we get a lot of feedback that way. So every week in my private Facebook group, I do an AMA, so like an Ask Me Anything, where I'm like, hey, it's WODprep Wednesday, ask me anything. And every single week it's the same set of questions, almost, like. Is it just autopilot. The same
people? They just show up again?
No. Well,
they're like, I'm dissatisfied with your answer.
Sometimes it's the same people, and I just give them the same answer every time. Nothing is changing in this question. Like, if you want to get better at your engine, you're going to have to learn to embrace the suck more. And we have a video for that. So, like, people are always... like CrossFit and really anything, any sport, it's all about status. A lot of people, they want to elevate their status, whether it's amongst their peers or whether it's in their own mind. They like to elevate their status. So I think progression or improvement is a way that people elevate their status, whether it's like me out-snatching you, or you out-snatching me, or me being able to do more pull-ups than you can, or and choose any metric. It's something that kind of is inherent in the way that we live. So whenever I would ask people, like my community, my email list back in the day, like 5 years ago when WODprep first started, it was like, hey, what do you need help with? Like, what do you like? If you could have one thing, what would it be? Like, super open-ended question. And you know what all of the responses were? You want to take a guess?
A muscle up?
Yes. It was all individual movements. So for some, it was muscle ups. For some, it was double unders. For some, it was being able to do an overhead squat. right? So all of these things, like super open, they could have answered anything in the world, right? I want to be a games athlete, or I want to be a movie star, right? Like they could have really answered anything, and it would always come back with one specific movement that was holding them back. So that was my bright idea to be like, hey, we should make courses to help people learn specific movements. And that's exactly what we did. And it's kind of been, that's what we've done since then, is we test programs. We make sure that they work really, really well. I have an incredible coaching staff behind me, and we just help people take control of their own training so that they can achieve these movements that they wish their coaches at their CrossFit gym would help them with, or they wish they had, 15, 20 minutes of extra programming, but no actual affiliate, or not many, have an ability to custom program for 300 different individuals who all want different goals. So that's where they come to us, and they're like, they get to choose what goal they want to pursue, and then we give them the template to follow to do it, and they don't have to take away from their normal training. So it was literally just asking people what they wanted, and then thinking, okay, this CrossFit gym goer who likes to go to class 5 days a week, I'm never going to tell them to stop doing their programming, because I think that's dumb. I don't know what gym they're going to. I don't know their programming. That would be silly of me to try to pull them out of that community. But instead, I can help enhance what they're doing by giving them this auxiliary work.
I also think that with people who are, trying to get these specific things, I actually just read a book about like social copying and things like that. It's called The Secret of Our Success. It's super good, very good. But it gave me more empathy for people who I can easily get frustrated with, because they're trying to do RX weights or prescribed weights when they can't lift it, or they're trying to do pull-ups in a workout when they can't really even do pull-ups when they're fresh, or they're trying to do handstand push-ups and like
they've never done one.
It's like you did one and now you're failing the rest of the reps for the next 20 minutes. Like, why would you do that? And
it's a status thing. The whole RX.
Well,
check mark.
I think it's not just status, and this actually makes me feel better.
Okay,
I'm not sure if I'm fully convinced of this, but the premise of the book has a lot to do with the way that humans learn, just by like copying other people who are more prestigious than them, right? Who do have higher status, but they don't necessarily think of themselves like, oh, I need to like have this same status, but they just don't filter what they copy. They just copy everything.
Right.
So like endorsements are essentially preying on this, instinct.
This was me wearing the Michael Jordan sweatband on my left arm in the exact spot that Michael Jordan wore it, because I was convinced that was going to make me Michael Jordan.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yep, so they just like, okay, well, that's the weight that this person who I look up to is using, so I'm going to do that. This person who I look up to is doing muscle ups in their workout, so I'm going to do that. So they just kind of like blanket copy everything. And
it's almost like there's an industry of people who are good at CrossFit creating, hey, follow my exact programming that I follow, and I think this is good for you. And people will be like, oh, that's a great idea to follow a CrossFit Games athlete programming. That's going to be perfect for me, the 9-to-5 desk job worker. I'm being sarcastic for all of those in the audience who don't sense that through the microphone.
Yeah. Well, that is something that, man, that's one of those super tricky and frustrating things to talk to people about, because they same thing. They just see it and they're like, oh, cool. Well, that's what I should do. I'm just going to copy that. And I think it used to make me more mad when I didn't understand that humans are just adapted to blanket copy everything without processing it. So I was like, you stupid idiot. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, oh, don't you know this, that, whatever. And it's like, actually, they just copy everything that they see and they don't filter it. But that said, the folks who are just kind of like trying to work out and then do a games athletes program, it's like, yo, that person is an absolute freak and trained for 5 years to be able to do that.
I know a lot of people, and I used to be a competitor, went to regionals a couple times on the East Coast. It was on team. Let me be very specific here. Almost made it to as an individual, and then had a staph infection. So that's my one claim to fame. Is I'm going to put in my Instagram profile. Almost an individual,
super close
regional competitor.
Super close.
And
if they invited a second round, would you have made it?
So what it was is there were all I needed was it was like 2 or 3 muscle ups in let's see, it was 2014. There was a workout. It was 15.4 maybe, where there was like toes to bar and cleans and wall balls, and then it ended and muscle ups. The muscle ups was like the end obstacle, and some people got through all the muscle ups and they got to go back to the rower and stuff like that. And I literally, like, Dave Castro announces that workout, and I was in like 30th place in the Mid-Atlantic or something like that, and I was like, oh my, like, this is gonna seal the deal, like, I'm in, you know. So Thursday night he announces the workout, and then like Friday morning I wake up and I can't walk, because literally an ingrown hair on my left leg from freaking clean. Like, have you ever had those little ingrown hairs on your leg from like banging a bar? Yeah, like I'm picking at one right now. You know, like literally what happened was one of those got infected with like it was a bad staph infection. I couldn't walk, couldn't put any pressure on it. Went to the ER, got shots. Went back to the house. Then the ER called me and was like, we gave you the wrong shots. Oh God. So that like it wasn't the right antibiotic to kill the particular strain of infection that I had. So that we had to go back to the ER because it was like an entire day, and I was like, they're like, oh yeah, it should like really die down in the next 24 hours. I'm like, it doesn't seem like it's dying down. Anyway, this was all like, you know, you have a very limited window to submit the workout. So I still did the workout.
With an inflamed...
Yeah, like I eventually got the antibiotics and didn't walk like at all until the day, like Monday, when I had to do the workout and submit it. And like walked, it was like hobbling around the gym and then did the workout. And I think I still ended up, I was like 3 muscle ups short of qualifying for regionals. Like that, like literally I like, you know, obviously... leaderboarded my way into misery and found out that I just missed it. Anyway, I'm glad I didn't make it because, you know, I was like, all right, I retire. No more competing. I'm done.
I've had enough of this.
Okay, bye.
I've had enough of this. Well, I actually, I do like hearing stories like that, just not mostly to laugh at your pain.
Yeah.
But
no, it was hilarious. You should have seen how silly. I threw up like 3 times during the workout too because whatever medicine I was on, I was just like, ugh.
Yeah, some like brutal antibiotic.
Yeah, and I'm just
destroying your entire system.
Just miserable, and like everybody at the gym was like there to cheer me on, and they're just kind of like looking at me like, oh gosh, he's not doing like, so. He's not doing very well in this workout.
Please don't do this anymore. But no, honestly, the people only see like a lot of the like success stories from athletes, and they don't always see that there's like every year when there's a qualification for something, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of stories like that that you just never hear. Yeah. Where it's like this person was super good and on the cusp of accomplishing this long time goal that they had, and then some random crazy event out of their control, you know, knocked them out, or they like just weren't quite good enough.
Dude,
and got knocked out.
I have one same season actually. So the whole time I was training with Gary Helmick because he owned a gym, CrossFit Revamped, like it's like a few miles down the road. Yeah. We were bros, like we just we throw down every day. You know, we just walk in there like, what are we doing today? And he'd just write something up on the whiteboard and we do it, like very old school CrossFit bros sessions. Sure, he's a freak. The year before he made it to the games, he got 3rd in the Mid Atlantic. It was either 3rd or 2nd. Jordan Troyan and Ben Smith were the other 2. Anyway, so I have my thing happen, and he's like, he was pretty distraught for me. He's like, dude, you know, he's like sitting in 3rd in the Mid Atlantic, you know, he's having no issues qualifying, and I'm just like, dude, you know, like all this training we had done together, like I couldn't beat him. I mean, he was at a different level, he was at a games level, but I threw down a couple times with him, and like I was like, wow, I'm getting pretty good at this. Like I'm keeping up with a games athlete, so I might be able to make it to regionals. And everything was setting up nicely. I was like, seemed like I was going to make it, and then this, you know, leg thing happened, and that ship sailed. He made it to regionals, and I was like, hey, once I recovered, like I'm going to do everything I can to push you to get you ready for regionals. And we tested every single workout that was released. The Mid Atlantic that year was like several weekends, like deep into the season.
Yeah, so you got to do workouts.
So we compared times with everybody. dude, he was winning regions. Like we were actually setting up his gym in the perfect, like the exact, like for the rope climb.
Yeah, you have to carry it this far.
Yeah, for the legless rope climb workout, we measured the exact distance. We made sure the rope was, attached to this. We did everything, all the controls. He was like winning regionals, man. Like not just making it to the games. He would have won like 2 out of the 3 previous regionals or something like that. And the day of regionals that he was going to leave, he was practicing a legless rope climb and broke his ankle.
Oh God!
And pulled out.
Yeah.
And when he told, I was like, dude, like, you pumped? You ready? He's like, dude,
actually,
you won't believe what I just did. And I'm like, what? He's like, I'm at the ER. I broke my ankle. And I'm like, oh no. So it's like, here I was feeling sorry for myself for not making regionals. And here's a sponsored games athlete who's like, I just blew it, just messing around on arguably, like, he was the best legless rope climber in the world because he like won the legless rope climb event in the games the year before. And it's just like he was practicing his arguably best movement ever and broke his ankle. And now I'm always very paranoid. If anytime anyone drops from a rope climb, I'm like, watch out for the rope.
Oh, he landed on the rope.
He landed
on
the rope, which is exactly why if you're a gym owner and you have ropes that are really long,
cut them. You got to do it. Your rope is way too long. You got to cut it.
Yeah, that's anyway. Yeah, so there's a lot of athletes out there like that, but I mean, I think the original thing I was talking about before I went down this regional sob story was like people don't realize that like these people who are training for the games and these people who like legitimately are sharing the workouts that they're doing, they are professionals, especially in today's day and age. Like just because you get the template that someone's following doesn't mean you're going to be like them, because they might not have the same strengths and the same weaknesses that you have. What you really need to do as an athlete is take a good, long, hard look at yourself and say, what are my weaknesses? And then attack them. That's why Matt Frazier is so good, is because what does he do? When he was first on the scene, he's like, I'm not good at gymnastics. And then he became arguably one of the best at gymnastics. And then one year at the games, he didn't do that well in the running. So what did he do next? The following year at the games, he won all of the running events. Essentially, he crushed them comparatively. So if you're an athlete who really wants to improve, one thing that you can do is just like be brutally honest and hand pick one at a time, maybe 2 at a time, major flaws in your game. That's what you need to be attacking. And for a lot of people, they're unwilling to be honest about themselves. They're unwilling to say like, man, I'm not good at rowing. They're not willing to just grind it out on a rower 4 days a week, 5 days a week. They'd rather just like go do their fun workouts. Like if I'm good at muscle ups, I'm just going to do muscle ups all day. It's really important for everyone, everyone listening. If you really do want to improve, you have to be brutally honest with your weaknesses and then find someone who can help you fix them.
Yeah. And it's, the idea of focusing on 1 or 2 things at a time, I think is also huge. Right? That like, yeah, it's tricky because you do want to maintain touches on a lot of things, but that I think that people underrate how much they can potentially improve over the course of a longer time frame by focusing on 1 or 2 things at a time for 2 months and then focusing on something else.
The whole focus aspect of what we do. That's literally all it is. Like our double under course, Double Unders Unleashed, it's fantastic. It works wonders. But to be quite honest with you, the reason it works so well is we are forcing people who are willing to stick with it. We're forcing them to have a rope in their hands and trip more than they've probably ever tripped before. Like I actually force people to trip. Like I make them jump in awkward ways that shows them how their basically jump affects their double unders. I call it a jump confusion complex. I made that up and it's awesome and it does work. But anyway, the only reason or the main reason these people see these huge breakthroughs is not because of some like magic. It's not because of some like strategic path that I have them. It's not the reps. It's not the sets. It's literally just like, wow, you're focusing finally for multiple weeks at a time. You're doing extra work on a specific skill. And for a lot of people, that's all you really need. That's how I learned most of the movements. There weren't actually any on the market, but like I didn't have to go buy a course about it. The reason we offer courses is because we help people understand what to do with that focus. If you want to focus on double unders, you can probably go do it on your own. But if you buy our course, we're going to give you the exact framework that we suggest you use to help focus on your double unders. It just makes it a little bit easier, and it helps give people the confidence of like, oh wow, this worked for like 1,000 other people, so I know it'll probably work for me, and that allows them to keep their focus longer rather than like 2 sessions of double under practice and yeah, I don't want to do that anymore, and then they move on to something else. Seeing that whole line of people that's like, wow, all these people got better at double unders, or all these people got better at muscle ups. I'm going to be one of these people, and they're willing to stick it out for the 2 months that we often find is required to make that huge breakthrough.
Yeah, I think that people will think that they're focusing and pushing much harder in terms of like consistency than they actually are. They're like, I work on it all the time. It's like, no, you don't.
Yeah,
like,
I've been here the whole time.
Yeah.
No,
I watched
don't.
you do it. You tried double unders 3 times, then whipped yourself a little harder than you wanted on the 3rd time, and then stopped.
Yeah,
it doesn't work. You have to keep going.
That's it. I mean, it's the resiliency. What I love about fitness is that it's not like everything else in our lives. Like all the apps, all the rewards tend to come very quickly. We're very unfocused human beings these days with distractions everywhere. But with fitness, like you literally cannot shortcut these skills. There's no way to truly like hack your way to it. There's no app that's going to automatically help you learn this thing. Like you have to put in the reps. And that's what I love so much about these skills is like to see someone who can do them all is to see someone who's truly put in the work and the focus to knock down all of these weaknesses one by one.
So we talked earlier a little bit about, you having a flash of insight of creating specific actionable plans for people to develop individual movements within CrossFit. But I mean, you've actually built like a pretty reasonable business out of that in terms of, you have people who are coaching with you. You have a lot of people that you helped. You have some folks who are going to the CrossFit Games, all based upon this stuff. But I mean, over the process of, trying to figure these things out, we talked a lot in this last half an hour or so about iterating on movements. What have you done to iterate on your business and actually figure out how better to help people and how better to actually just grow within WODprep?
So when the first course that I ever made was Muscle Up Madness, and it was very much a brain dump. It was a very comprehensive course. There were, a ton of videos. There was obviously the programming. There was a lot of bonuses, and there was a ton of information. All the courses that were released nowadays are very much condensed and simpler. Because again, coming back to just like, it's not complicated to improve this stuff. We just have to really focus on what matters. Like if you focus on what matters, like what's the next step, that's how we're going to make a lot of progress. So a lot of our courses now are they're very much like, hey, let's test where you are and let's follow a very simple framework to work on the 2 or 3 key aspects. Like for instance, we have a shoulder mobility course called Shoulder ROM. It's one of our best sellers. It's one that, everyone will see at some point if you're in the WODprep, community or WODprep circle of influence. Like we're going to say you should buy Shoulder ROM because it's fantastic. And we work on 3 aspects of shoulder mobility, or we work on 3 aspects of shoulder performance. A lot of people worry about their mobility, but they don't worry about their stability and their strength. So Coach Gary, what he developed was we have workouts and movements that we do to help increase your mobility, but we also have stuff in there that will help you increase your stability. And then we also have stuff in there that once you've done those 2 things will help increase your strength. Very simple. It's not complicated. You've probably seen some of the drills before, but they're not presented in a way that's like easy to understand and in a very step-by-step process. So we're taking these, like, for whatever reason, a lot of people have made them very complicated and very like, just like way more advanced than they need to be. And we take them, we simplify them, and we make them very prescriptive. So when anyone joins our courses, it's like, it's day 1, do this. It's day 2, do this. And if you're willing to just kind of follow and actually participate and use our resources that we have, you're going to see great results. If I had one thing that we've done big time to like iterate and improve, it's to add like the extra coaching support on the back end. So each one of our groups or each one of our courses comes with a private group. The only way you can get into those private groups, they're actually secret on Facebook. You can't find them. But the only way to get into there is by joining the course. And then like once you're inside, you have access to it for life. As long as you don't like refund the product or whatever, you have access to it. So you can always go in there and get the coaching feedback that you need. And we're always there to help. Like we're always there to, take you to that next level within that movement. So for our handstand walking course, like people are afraid to get up on the wall. Well, we have support. We have hundreds of other athletes who used to have trouble getting up on the wall, and we can help them through that in that social environment. So I think adding a little bit of the social side of things, even though it's on the internet and it's on Facebook, both things that I have a love-hate relationship with, it does seem to really help people. And then I'd say the third thing, from a business perspective, one of the best things that I ever did was not be afraid to hire incredible people. So I have an amazing team, and it's an amazing team of people who are like really good at what they do. And I give them lots of freedom. I'm not, or I try not to be, maybe they'll disagree, who knows, but I try not to be
we'll do a behind the scenes
expose
on the WODprep compounds. It's like the Facebook content moderators.
Yeah. They're literally going to be like, I don't know what he was saying. He's a total jerk. I try to let them be very autonomous. So like, I have a coach Brent, who like came to me and said, hey, like, I notice a lot of people in our double under course don't really know how to do single unders yet. Can I make a single under course and then we'll like give it to everyone as a bonus who joins the double under course? I'm like, yep. And he's like, do you want to see my program? Do you want to see? I'm like, nope, you are the best double under coach we have now, because he's actually a graduate of that course. And now he's incredible at teaching it. So I'm like, hey, no, I trust you. Like, you are the one, and I give you full control. Make it, and I'm sure it's going to be great. And he's like, wow, that's awesome. And he went and he made it, and guess what? It's great. So hiring the right people and giving them autonomy to do what they want to do to make WODprep better, I trust them, rather than trying to be like a very, overly controlling person that, tries to manage every single aspect of the business. My head would explode. So I don't do that. I just focus on what's going to help us help more people, and how are we going to continue to grow and become like the go-to resource for these specific movements.
And how do you create an environment where those ideas do bubble up from people? So I think a lot of people like that idea of like, give people autonomy, and then they come up with ideas, and then it doesn't necessarily play out that way. So how do you make sure that, well, not necessarily make sure, but just create the environment that allows that to happen?
One thing that I think helps is I'm always willing to invest in them. So for instance, like I've sent people to various certifications, various camps, various like educational programs. Like I'll buy courses for them. If they are willing to learn and expand, I'm willing to fund it. And I think because of that relationship where it's like, hey, Ben, I wanted to go to, XYZ gymnastics course. Like I'll help you out, or I'll cover it all. And all I ask is that you take what you learn and you apply it to our courses. Because like I want my coaches, which they are, by the way, I want my coaches to be better coaches than me. And that's what they go do is they go, they absorb, they're like, hey, Ben's trusting me with learning this information and then applying it. And then they come back with ideas to improve, whether it's on the business and marketing side of things, or whether it's on the actual like product development, like courses side of things and the coaching. It's always investing in education, and then education ends up becoming a really good positive return on that investment.
And are a lot of the coaches graduates of the programs?
We have several. Well, what's cool is all the coaches, or all the team, the entire team, except for like the web developer, and she's amazing. Kayla, shout out to Kayla, she's amazing. Everyone except for Kayla is a CrossFitter, like a full-time CrossFitter. they actively pay for a CrossFit membership or do it in their garage gyms or something like that. So I think that's cool. In terms of the coaches, I'd say all of them are from within the WODprep community. Brent, who is my original coach, was a graduate of my double under course, and then he just became the go-to coach for all my other courses. Like, he knows them better than I do, even though I created them. And now he's done a lot of iterating and stuff like that. So all the coaches are from the WODprep community. Not all of them necessarily were paying customers before becoming coaches, but almost every single person on the team is like, oh yeah, like WODprep helped me do XYZ. In fact, the guy who helps us with some of our Facebook marketing, I met him in Thailand and taught him how to do muscle up in like 5 minutes. He didn't believe I could teach him. And I did. I taught him in like 5 minutes, and he's like, all right, dude, I'll help you with your marketing. Because he's like a professional marketer, and he's like, all right, fine. Like, okay, I owe you one. Yeah, you got me. So yeah.
Because I was thinking that there's probably some interesting overlap there as far as people who tend to gravitate towards something like WODprep, either having taken the courses or, like you said, being somehow involved in the community, are likely to see the value in that continuing education, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas I think potentially other coaches, maybe working like a brick and mortar gym or whatever, don't necessarily see that because they're not involved in the process of continuing education. So they don't value it as much, and they don't necessarily learn from it as well. But if it's people who are part of your company because they've either taken the courses or see value in it, then sending them to other continuing education, like, they're the type of person who's going to value that and who's going to potentially be able to take away actionable stuff from that.
Yeah, and I'm sure, like, I remember when I used to own, before I sold my brick and mortar CrossFit gym, we would actively invest in the coaches. I want the coaches. I want my people to be the ones receiving most of the benefits in terms of like continuing education, not just educating myself. Yeah. And I think that's a mistake a lot of gyms make, is like, the head coach always is the one that goes to these like events and learns and pays all this money for these extra certifications, and then they try to impart that wisdom as like a trickle down effect. But one of the most empowering things you can do is be like, hey, you, like, maybe you're not, you're not the top of the food pyramid, or the top of the pyramid, so to speak, in the business.
Top of the food pyramid, fucking seeds,
sugar,
it's like oil, sugar.
And sugar, my favorite. Yeah. All the things I love, butter and sugar. I'm hungry. No, if you're not at the top of the food chain, is what I'm trying to say, or top of the business pyramid, I'm still willing to invest in you, and I know that my investment's going to pay off. Just being willing to trust people with education. That's the best way you're gonna help empower them and get them to give you incredible results in the back end.
Yeah, the ability to put people in a position where they're learning, and then to trust them to take action based upon that, I think is challenging. But if you can execute it properly, like, there's potential hugely outsized rewards.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely.
So Ben, you mentioned a few times you're hungry. We've been sitting on a bed together, just hanging loose.
This is totally normal.
This is just a normal activity in the city of Toronto. But we're gonna go get some food. So tell people to wrap up what you want them to do. They should join your email list for sure. I read your emails; they're good.
Yeah, thank you. We try to make them entertaining. I think a lot of, we're a business, and sometimes people forget that. So, like, yes, we do sell things in our email, and if you join our email list, like, I'm going to tell you to buy something multiple times. That's a thing that will happen. But all that time, I'm going to also do my best to educate you. We have hundreds of thousands of people, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, or email list, or YouTube, that learn all the information they need from us completely free. But if you are an athlete that is looking to really focus on some of these more complicated movements, if you want to really dial in on things like double unders, bar muscle ups, ring muscle ups, handstand push-ups, handstand walks, your nutrition, pretty much all of these individual skills, we probably have a course for it. And obviously, when the doors are open, we'd love for you to join those courses. If you are listening to this podcast and you mention you just email me, ben@wodprep.com, and you want to join one of the courses, I will maybe open up a spot for you and can help you get inside. We're also always developing new courses. At the time of recording, we have a new course that's going to be opening pretty soon that's called Happy Hips. And it's it's an 9 week, because we added an extra week.
Bonus.
Yeah, bonus week. Bonus week. It's a 9-week course that basically helps you do these simple, easy to do, but a lot of CrossFit gyms don't program them, active mobility routines, or active stretches, as some people might call them, to help you unlock your hips and finally like squat below parallel without problems. We've had a couple really good transformations with that, and we're super excited to release that. So reach out to me, ben@wodprep.com. If you want to join the email list and get a whole bunch of free stuff, just go to wodprep.com, and I'm sure there'll be some sort of, whether it's a pop-up or there'll be something telling you to join our email list or to sign up for something free. Just do that. And I think another thing that I have to mention, because a lot of people don't understand this, every single one of our courses legitimately comes with a 100% results or your money back guarantee. So like, if you are on the fence and you don't know how to like do double unders and you're on the fence to join our double under course, you can literally join it and then a year later just be like, nah, Ben, I hate you. Give me my money back, and I'll give you your money back. Even though that's a very mean email, I would give it back to you. Like our guarantee is very odd. And I've had several other like online business people be like, dude, what? It's not like a 30-day guarantee? Like, what is that? And I'm like, I don't want to put a cap on it. Like, I'm not going to like say on day 61 or day 31, like, you can't get your refund. No, we literally have a 100% satisfaction guarantee. If you take any of our courses and you decide that you didn't like it, you need your money back, it wasn't right for you, you didn't get the results you were looking for, maybe it was incredible and you got all the results you're looking for and you're just an asshole and want your money back, you can do that too. And we actually stand by that guarantee. So I just have to be very clear about that, because a lot of people think it's some sort of scam, and it's not. We actually give people their money back.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Western calendar is arbitrary. It's, who cares how many times the Earth has gone around the sun, or whether it's spun fully around on its axis. Like, just doesn't matter. You can get your money back.
I just want people, like, I want you to buy it, because what happens, the reason I'm able to give that guarantee is because people buy it and they're like, oh my gosh, like, this was really good. Like, holy cow. And I'm like, yeah, see, I told you. Like, I'm not an internet marketer scammer. Like, I literally legitimately care about every single athlete that takes our courses, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that you know that. So,
thanks for listening all the way through. I admire your grit, your persistence, and your perseverance. Since you made it, I have a few favors to ask of you. Go ahead and open up the show notes on whatever podcast player you use. In there, you'll find links to all the resources that were mentioned throughout the show. There's also some links there in which you can leave a review or subscribe to the show. And podcasters are always harping on this, because this actually makes a difference in terms of the algorithms that recommend podcasts to new people. So if you do that, it helps more people find the show. And if you head over to toddneef.com, you can sign up to receive most of my thoughts and writing, which really only go out to the email list. A lot of it never makes it to the blog or the podcast. So if you like what I have to say and you want to see some of my recommendations and stuff that I've been checking out, go ahead and subscribe to that email newsletter as well.